So, welcome all to the Climate Alliance Conference, International Conference Localizing European Green Deal. I hope you already had a really good morning with some really interesting keynotes and panel discussions, etc. We are now starting the workshops, and our workshops is all about bringing together nature-based enterprises and local authorities. Yeah, and this is what we'll be talking about in the next half an hour. This workshop is in cooperation with Connecting Nature, and most of our speakers will be from that project, and they're going to share their insights with you. First of all, before we go any further, I want to do a short introduction to Hopin. So please use the chat function to ask questions, but also to comment what has been said here. My colleague Anne-Kathrin, she will collect your questions and then pose them to the speakers during our Q&A sessions. So really important is that you use the chat function here of the online session, which is what we are having now, this workshop, and don't use this one here, which is the conference, which is for all the conference participants. So if you pose a question there, I'm afraid it might get lost. And here you also have you can here also click on people, and there you can see who are the other participants, and you can also have the possibility to schedule bilateral meetings if you want to after this workshop. There is translation available for this workshop in German and English, and so feel free to click here on the translation button. Also es gibt Übersetzung für diesen Workshop, Deutsch, Englisch. Wenn Sie die Übersetzung brauchen sollten, dann einfach hier auf den Tab gehen, Übersetzung, und die Übersetzung einschalten. Yeah, exactly. The session will be recorded, and all the recordings and the presentations will be made available on the Climate Alliance website after the conference. And sometimes within this frame, the presentations are quite small, so feel free to use this button here, this little rectangle, to switch to full screen mode. Yeah, and I just briefly want to introduce myself. My name is Svenja Schuchmann. I work for Climate Alliance, the Climate Alliance office in Frankfurt, and I'm also involved in 2 nature-based solution projects, one of them Connecting Nature, and I will be the moderator of today. And the webinar will be, not the webinar, but more the workshop will be divided into 2 parts. So you will have the first part, which will be about financing of nature-based solutions. We will have introduction, an example, and then a Q&A session. So again, please write your questions in the chat, and then my colleague Anne-Kathrin will collect them all and read them to our speakers. And then comes a second part of our workshop, which will be about nature-based enterprises and entrepreneurship. And it will be the same. We'll have an introduction, an exemplary part, and then the Q&A session. So I would like to end my short introduction by asking you a question. How familiar are you with nature-based solutions? Because we have noticed that within local authorities, some of them know nature-based solutions, others don't. So we're really interested in knowing your your experience with it. And I will try to start the poll. And but sorry, The poll is already there. Can you see the poll? Maybe I have a feedback from you guys.
Yes, it's there on the right-hand side.
Yes. So
under poll.
Yeah. So please all fill in the poll. I'll give you a few minutes for this, and then we'll show the results.
Seems like there's a good level of knowledge, Svenja. So people have either heard of it or implemented it, which is really good. It'd be great to get some feedback from those who've already implemented it. That might be Poznan, though. Some of our case studies, I think, will have implemented it. So,
in fact, I was voting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Excellent. But there's only one person who's unfamiliar with it. So no problem. We can do a quick recap on what the concept is about.
Excellent. So this would also bring me then to the first part of our workshop, and I would hand over then to Siobhan McQuaid, who works for Trinity College and is the coordinator of the Connecting Nature project and working on these financing topics also in the project. And then I will just start by sharing the screen or your presentation for you. Just a second. Just a second, I will close my presentation so that we have yours there.
While you're doing that, Svenja, if I could just ask for the three people who've implemented NBS, maybe to just mention in the chat the type of NBS you've implemented and the country that you've implemented it in. So I think we're familiar with the Poznan example, which will be presented after me, but it would be interesting to see if there are parallels with other types of NBS in other kind of countries. That would be really interesting to know. In the meantime, or while you're doing that, I can see that Svenja has brought up my presentation. If you want to go back to that, if you'd like to click through to the slide, yeah, exactly. So just a recap, because there are a number of different definitions of nature-based solutions out there, and I've just come from the IUCN Congress earlier. Well, it's still running, but earlier this week, and of course they were the first to coin the term nature-based solutions, but we use the European Commission's definition, which is that nature-based solutions are inspired and supported by nature, they're cost-effective, they simultaneously provide environmental, social and economic benefits. So those three, that kind of triple bottom line dimension, I suppose, is very important to the conversation here today, and they help to build resilience. And the Commission have strengthened their definition to say that they provide multiple benefits for biodiversity. And if they don't improve biodiversity or they're not delivering ecosystem services, then they're quite simply, they're not nature-based solutions. And the IUCN went one step further earlier this week, and they said that unless nature-based solutions are clearly addressing a societal challenge, clearly measure how effective they are in addressing that societal challenge, and clearly involve communities in an inclusive approach, they don't consider them nature-based solutions. So as I suppose the popularity of the concept of nature-based solutions has taken off and more people are interested and are starting to implement it, there's some confusion starting to emerge about, what they actually mean, and there's some criticisms of greenwashing. So this is why we're seeing increasingly stricter definitions, and we're seeing the IUCN Global Standard published, and then we're seeing only yesterday that they announced that there's going to be third-party assurance bodies certifying that these principles of the global standard are being met. So that's something we're going to see increasingly in the future, is a stricter monitoring of what is and what isn't a nature-based solution, which I think is a good thing. Svenja, if you wouldn't mind going to the next slide. What we have done, because this is a question in Connecting Nature, we're supporting 10 cities across Europe, including Poznan, in implementing nature-based solutions. And they are asking those questions over the last 4 years. What is a nature-based solution and what isn't? So our technical expert came up with these 5 questions. Does it use nature and natural processes? Does it provide or improve social benefits? Does it provide economic benefits? Does it provide environmental benefits? And does it have a net benefit in biodiversity? And if you can answer yes to those questions, then I think you're on a good path. So yeah, that's just to kind of define define what are nature-based solutions and kind of some of the directions and I suppose in which it's going in the future. Next slide, please, Svenja. So what we have done in Connecting Nature is to support our cities, and we've kind of co-created this framework to support cities in implementing nature-based solutions. And we've co-created this with our cities. So it's very much, I suppose, city-led and designed and developed around cities, local authorities and municipalities. And there are 7 different elements within this framework. And, you don't have to start in one point or end in another. You can pick up anywhere. But there's 3 essential phases. We see a planning phase, which can be very long, a delivery phase, which is generally quite short. And then really importantly, and often neglected, is this stewardship or maintenance phase. And the area of where I've been focusing on very much is in the area of financing and business models, and in the area of nature-based enterprises. And these are intrinsically linked with some of these others because, co-production is one of the really important elements. When we're talking about financing and business models, they have to be co-produced with communities. And then when you're talking about sustainable business models, you're talking about potentially looking at co-governance solutions. Key to all of this in terms of financing is impact assessment. One of the biggest challenges to date in securing financing, either public sector financing or private sector financing, is being able to measure the performance of nature-based solutions. So if it's going to address the societal challenge, if it's going to address flooding, if it's going to reduce temperatures during the summer months, how is that measured? And that's really, really important, and that's been missing. But thankfully, there's a new handbook on indicators and measurement out last year. So I think there's important progress being made on answering those issues. So if we move to the next slide, please, Svenja. One of the tools that we have developed, which I think brings a number of things together in Connecting Nature, is the business model canvas for nature-based solutions. So as you can see, we look at financing and financing requirements across the planning phase, across the phase of capital investment, and then, in terms of where is the financing for operational costs going to come. And of course, that's very much related to the ongoing business model. So what we did, again, we co-developed it with the cities, is we put together a very simple guidebook, and it's designed as a co-production tool. So you can see on the right, we've run a number of these workshops in all of our cities. And in fact, Isabel has done probably, you're the lead, I think, on this now. We developed it in Trinity and tested it with 3 cities. But then Isabel has gone out and really deployed this workshop in the other 7 cities and further, in other kind of international workshop settings. So it's really useful in terms of bringing stakeholders together, community stakeholders, investors, the public sector, different agencies and NGOs and so on, to kind of look at really what different benefits the nature-based solution will bring, and how can we align kind of investment and financing with those kind of different benefits. So if you're interested, that's a very useful tool that is available from our website. Maybe Isabel, I don't know if you could stick up the link in chat. I think it would be could be quite useful. Okay, so on the next slide then, what I wanted to talk about today also was a topic that's very current at the moment. And this is the topic of the nature-based economy. So I am a part of this European task force, which brings together a lot of kind of European projects. The European Commission has invested over 200 million euros in nature-based solutions initiatives and involved over 100 cities across Europe in developing and implementing nature-based solutions. And so what we have done is we've put together, there is a number of task forces bringing these all together. And as part of the task force on financing and business models, we've set up a working group on the nature-based economy. And all of these projects you can see on the right, experts from those projects have come together to look at this concept of a nature-based economy, which is really saying, okay, if you look at nature-based solutions, they contribute to the environmental, social, social and economic benefits. A lot of work has been done and a lot of knowledge created about the environmental benefits and about the social and benefits for health and well-being. Very little literature, very little is known about how nature-based solutions can create new enterprises, new innovations, new jobs. And I think in the context of, you know, the European Green Deal, this is really important that we have this discussion. So this is really what this consultation is about. We've put together a kind of a white paper where we identify 11 different sectors where we think there's potential for growth from, you know, it could be green buildings, which is really strong in Germany and Austria, for example. There's some case studies there on that. To sustainable forestry, sustainable agriculture, and then new emerging sectors like, you know, nature-based solutions for health, smart technologies for nature-based solutions, and so on. So it's an interesting topic for discussion, and we've just actually extended the deadline. We had a session at the IUCN Congress on this. We're talking to you guys here today in Climate Alliance International Conference, and really we want to get as many people as possible kind of saying, okay, I'm a policymaker, or I'm an, you know, wherever you're coming from, it would be great to get your views and perspectives on this, and also to come up with recommendations on how we can address this. What are the challenges you face in kind of putting in place supports to get the nature-based economy off the ground, and, you know, what kind of measures would be useful to support, you know, green jobs and green enterprises and so on. So if you have any suggestions or comments, you can put them in the chat already, or else you can log on, and there's a very simple kind of drop down kind of question, you know, dropped 5 minutes, less even, tick box question online there that you can access. And really, if you could go to the next slide, Svenja, and I'm nearly wrapped up now. The objective is to, you know, to really look at how we can increase substantially funding in nature-based solutions and change the ratio of funding. So you can see on the left the current situation, and this is coming from a UN State of Finance for Nature report, which was published earlier this year. And they identified that currently 86% of nature-based solutions globally are financed by the public sector, with the private sector only financing a very small percentage. Now, with nature-based solutions, and in particular nature-based solutions like public parks and, you know, other kinds of, you know, nature-based solutions in the public space, they're never going to be funded by the private sector, nor should they be. But there are other areas, like, for example, green buildings, sustainable tourism, sustainable forestry, where there are massive opportunities to increase private sector investment. So really, this is what this report is about, is trying to say, okay, how can we encourage the public sector to invest more? But how can we also encourage the private sector to invest more? And yeah, this is, again, I think the call is by 2030 to triple investment in nature-based solutions, and by 2050 to quadruple it. And this is a call from the UN, and it's a call that recognises that nature-based solutions have an important role. I think Oxford University report came out last year saying that they have the potential to mitigate against up to kind of 1/3 of the carbon that's created, you know, at the moment. So they've really, in terms of trying to keep us below that 2 degree and if possible 1.5 degree climate change, these kind of solutions play a very important role, and they also play an essential role in tackling the biodiversity crisis, which is the second crisis facing our time. So we need massive investment. To secure massive investment, we need to look not just at the environmental benefits, but also to look at the social and what we're talking about here today, the economic benefits. So I think that's my time up. Next, I think that's it from me. There's a number of suggestions there and recommendations on how we can support more private sector investment. And I know Agnieszka is going to present an example of how they have worked in Poznan with the private sector. Just if I'll finish on the last slide here, which is an example from Nicosia, because they weren't able to join us here, but they have a very simple example to conclude with. They have they're launching an Adopt a Park program, which is essentially a public-private people partnership. And what they have done is they are working with with private organisations or private businesses known to the council, and they're sponsoring essentially a park. And I suppose this is in response to the challenges that they face as a city council in terms of getting funding for parks, and in particular for these kind of smaller parks. And there's many pocket parks around Nicosia that they're really struggling to get funding with. So it's a really interesting program. They're looking at fiscal incentives to incentivize businesses to get involved. And they're looking at co-designing these projects with the community. And very importantly, they're looking at long-term contracts so that they can work with businesses in the long term, and not just for the upfront development of these pocket parks, but also to encourage them to be maintained. Okay, I'll leave it there. Svenja?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for your presentation. And I think you covered like all spheres, making it very open, citing the UN goals, etc., to this like very specific example of the pocket park in Nicosia. And now I'd like to give the floor to Agnieszka. She works in the city administration of Poznan in Poland. She's part also of the Connecting Nature project, and she will share with you how they have attracted private financing in their city. So Agnieszka, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Svenja, and I'm really glad to be today with you because maybe our experience in Poznan could be interesting both for municipalities but also investors and private sector. I wanted already share the screen, but the presentation disappeared. Just give me a moment. I will do it once again. Yes, and now should be.
Just want to say that if any of you, the participants, are interested in posing questions, please put them in the chat, and then we can discuss about that in the subsequent Q&A session.
Okay. So can you see already the presentation? Yeah, okay. So I must admit that two examples I will tell you about are our first experience for our Connecting Nature team. Usually we finance projects from two sources, municipal budget or external public funds like European Union funds. However, in our city hall already there were some first experience, but they didn't result in regulations on the city level. Even more, they had some negative opinion from regional accounting chamber. So now we are very careful with using this kind of sponsorship agreements we could benefit. However, in our nature-based enterprise strategy for Poznan, where we are working on increasing awareness of business about the possibilities to introduce nature-based solutions in the city and cooperation with Poznan, we also want to present different models of such cooperation. That's why we have different examples and different path we are undertaking to achieve that. Yes. And so the first project I will tell you about is a school project, generally speaking. And it's about the cooperation with one of the Poznań school, basing on activities from Connecting Nature. In fact, it's kind of upscaling project that we used to have in kindergartens in Poznań, introducing natural playgrounds. School needs another type of green surrounding, and we want to do the pilot project together with new partners. And these partners are Torpol company, school number 11 in Poznań, and we are the third partner. Torpol company is the company responsible for transportation infrastructure, especially for railways and tram tracks. So they are not a nature-based enterprise in any way. However, they corporate social responsibility policy attract a big attention to environmental issues, and they would like to support Poznań in that. And our cooperation starts with the invitation we received from Torpol company. And after this invitation to cooperate, that was quite general, we presented a catalog of nature-based solutions recommended by our team to implement. And firstly, they were very interested in natural playgrounds in kindergartens, but these projects were already in the phase of development. So we decided that we will try with them something new, and that will be the surrounding of the school. So current status of this cooperation is that we already have agreed scope of cooperation. We already have the concept project prepared by landscape architecture experience already in our cooperation with kindergartens. But we are stuck for a little moment because in the agreement, very important for the company was using the sponsorship paragraph. And company expected that we can issue invoice for promotion activities around this project. And of course, it's not possible for the public institution. So now the most probable solution will be a donation approach, and maybe it could be done directly to the school. We expect the final of this activities probably this year, but maybe the implementation of the gardens will start already in next year. The second project, it's a result of information on Poznań activities that were spread during the Connecting Nature Enterprise Summit organized in June this year. And here we've got 4 partners. It's a Green Up company, which represents another company, Reforest Action from France, our City Hall, and Poznań Municipal Forests. And here you can see the area of one of the Poznań district, Krzyżowniki, where it was supposed to be built golf course, but city decided that the more appropriate for the city would be reforestation of this area. Unfortunately, there was no money saved for this idea. And that's why it was very good to hear the proposal from Green Up company that that is possible to reforest this area using money coming from Reforest Action company. This Reforest Action company is a French company that raises funds from companies and individuals and allocates them to finance afforestation projects around the world. Green Up is it's a company that is a consultant company, and it's looking for right municipalities to support with this money. And after hearing what we are doing in Poznań and seeing our welcome video to Poznań, they decided that Krzyżowniki and Poznań are the best place to offer their funds. At this moment, we already have prepared area because it was already prepared for reforestation. We know the scope of the agreement, and we are just waiting for re-addition of agreement shape, because in this situation we have to use this Green Up company as a for party in the agreement, and financial flow will go through this company, because again, as a city, we cannot receive money directly from the company. So Green Up company will do the investment process, and our role will be about giving the ground and support in maintaining the forest, also in organizing event for inhabitants of Poznań to promote the idea. So maybe let's talk about the roadblocks we had in these two examples. As I said in the beginning, we had a little experience, but many question marks. But we think that the more experience we have, the new solutions are coming, and that's the best idea to learn and do something in a new way. Difficult for us was also the shape and scope of the cooperation, and the most difficult was the financial flow between public and private partner. So now we are sure that we have to use different solutions in every situation. We needed also support from colleagues in financial and legal departments, because that are solutions not only for our team but for the whole city. Quite big roadblock is also decision-making process, not only in City Hall but also in big companies. Because it have to be combined with the vegetation period that influence the time when the actions can be done, and it could make that the action have to be postponed to next year if we don't manage with the administrative action to be undertaken. There are not only roadblocks, there are also some enablers supporting our actions. In school project, the fact that company was seeking for a good aim of their corporate social responsibility and they were open for our proposal was very interesting, because then we can use our experience we already have with introducing nature-based solutions and offer something really concrete. In forest action, in forest project, this direct effect of promoting our action during Enterprise Summit was a big enabler. And in both projects, the fact that we have common aims and that we are open for changes and that we have to be flexible is also something that is very supportive. Very important is direct contact of collaborating people in all partner organizations. And as already was said, the help from legal and financial colleagues. If we are talking about impact, unfortunately, I cannot show you the photo of the implementation, but you can see here the school and the future green wall that we suppose be in really near future. And what is important for us that already both companies are offering continuation of our collaboration, and that gives us a more ideas for the next in our next plans. We also think that training cycle on nature-based solutions that we are implementing the same time will allow us to go with the information to other investors and entrepreneurs, and that maybe new models will appear in the near future, the new models of cooperation. So summing up, the innovation in this process were new opportunities, new experience with using new solutions. And our recommendation is to be open for this source of financing. But it's very important to analyze fully the regulations. So the pilot project level, it's good to examine how it will look like in practice, and to be open for more than one solution. From my side, that's all. If you have any question, I will be ready to answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Agnieszka, for giving these two examples from like brand new projects you have started now. I'm going to have a look into the questions that were posed in the chat. And maybe I'm going to start with a question, I think that's directed more to Siobhan, which is a question generally on nature-based solution. And here someone asked, is the implementation of green roofs an example for nature-based solutions, possibly coupled with photovoltaic and or rainwater retention?
The short answer is yes, definitely. And I think this is probably where the EC definition of nature-based solutions is possibly broader than the IUCN definition or even the UN kind of definition. So we see three different types of nature-based solution. One is, you know, where there's, and when I say we, this is a paper, Egermont 2015. I can put the link in if you want. But essentially there's three types. One is very natural landscapes, okay, where the objective of the nature-based solution is to really do very little human intervention, is to conserve it and to restore it. And then the second one is kind of more managed interventions, but it could be around like sustainable agriculture and sustainable forestry, but it's still working with existing ecosystems and just managing them in a more sustainable way. And then the third type of nature-based solutions, which we recognize are what we called newly created or managed ecosystems, and green roofs would be a very good example of that. Now, this is probably where most people would point and say, well, are green roofs good for biodiversity? And if they are properly planned, the answer is yes. If they're not properly planned and they're just being constructed for aesthetic purposes, then possibly no. So this also kind of raises a really important discussion we just had on an earlier session this morning with a group of foresters on the importance of standards around nature-based solutions to make sure that they are adhering to best practice principles. And I think the communities which Isabel is going to introduce in the next community or in the next session is really important in terms of raising awareness of what is good practice in green roofs, and maybe not so much what is bad practice, but highlighting good practice. And it's very much industry led. So that's really important. The other thing, the mention of photovoltaic. So I know that's another sustainable technology, but I think another really interesting way is looking not just at nature-based solutions in isolation, but at looking about how we can combine them with other types of solutions, like, for example, very often, as you said, you've got your solar panels on your roof, and can those be combined with, you know, green roofs or rainwater retention? That's a really good example, and we'd like to see and encourage a lot more of that. You know, looking at opportunities for, you know, sustainable energy. We can already see, you know, nature-based solutions combined with sustainable transport, and you've got your green tram lines and so on. So lots of opportunities there. But that was a very long response to what I said was a short answer, yes. Back to you, Svenja.
Yes, so I hope it clarified the question. And we have the next question to Agnieszka. This is from Calypso City of Essen, and he is asking, are you also looking to get the companies to fund the stewardship phase, or to get them to take responsibility in other ways, e.g. CSR, team building events?
Yes, we are looking for, but that's the most difficult part. And so far, we have only experience in that with open garden. It's a type of natural playground in kindergarten, which was open for citizens, and then we have experience in maintaining together the space. In these examples I told you about today, still we don't have such solution, but we find it as a really good way to do it. And for sure we are working on that, and I think that would be very practical effect of the connecting nature if we would have more and more maintenance, stewardship concepts for green areas in the city. So yes, we are looking for, but still not as many examples as I would like you to present. And there is one more question: how many overall presented project concepts have founding this way? So far we have 2 examples from Poznań that were done this way. Other example of nature-based solutions are financed or from municipality budget or from European funds.
Okay, thank you, Agnieszka. We have a question from Martina Strobel. Is there a list or overview of projects or concepts that have been realized or that are being realized? Then here maybe you can specify the question a bit more, Martina. What do you mean exactly? And to whom is it posed? Is it a question to Agnieszka or to Siobhan?
I suppose just, is that relating to nature-based solutions, or is it specifically in relation to kind of private sector funding of nature-based solutions? I can answer both anyway.
Yeah.
While you're waiting for a response.
Martina said she's looking for ideas and for her town. It is open. It's an open question to all.
Okay. So in terms of nature-based solutions, you can have, and Isabel is the kind of also the lead on the communications for Connecting Nature. So as far as I'm aware, in Connecting Nature, we directly work with 10 cities and then these hubs, as I mentioned, in other countries. And there is a description of the nature-based solutions in each of those cities with some videos and so on on our website. Maybe, Isabel, if you want to add the link to the website in the chat, that would be really good. And there's also a whole list of guidebooks and resources on how to, on very plain English. Actually, there's some other, I think there's some German versions as well, and some other language versions as well on different guidebooks. In terms of, financing, this is something that we're working on the nature-based economy report at the moment. So we're collecting feedback, and we'll be including the feedback from Poznan and Nicosia. We're also working with our other cities. In all of our cities, we're exploring the potential for this. So at Coruña, Poznan and A Coruña had a really good session last week or the week before, A Coruña in Spain. They're interested in also developing a similar approach and working with the the private sector. It's not an area where, there's been a lot of attention paid. Most of the focus has been on collaboration between cities and community groups, which is really important. But with this report, we're really trying to put the emphasis, switch the emphasis, because it's very important to retain that emphasis on the community public sector, but to expand it to include, how can we include businesses in this as partners in all 3 phases? In the planning phase, working with communities, as I think there's a couple of mentions there about, as part of their community social engagement. Then in terms of the implementation phase, as in terms of contributing financing, and really important question that you answered there, how can you continue to work with them in the stewardship phase? And that's involving them, you know, in terms of, you know, cleanup events, maintenance events, ongoing engagement with the community. So I think that's the ideal type of collaboration that all of our cities will be working towards. But as Agnieszka said, you know, you have to start somewhere, and it's a learning process for the corporates and the businesses as much as it is for the cities. So we're getting there. But watch the nature-based economy report. If you click on the consultation, you can request a copy of that when it's out, and that would be the best probably way of getting up-to-date information. I hope that answers your question, Martina.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Siobhan. And then I would take now a last question in this Q&A block. It's with regards to the Adopt a Park example in Nicosia. And Calypsis wants to know, are the companies saving money in the long run or rather profiting in other ways, such as marketing? Are the tax incentives higher than the fees?
It's primarily designed as a CSR measure, and I think that's the corporate social responsibility. And it's working with local businesses. The example that Agnieszka presented was working with a very large kind of national state organization, as well as with an international kind of NGO. In the case of Nicosia, what's interesting is they're working with local businesses of all sizes. So it doesn't have to be your international corporate. And it's very much about recognizing that these businesses are part of the community. They live there, their employees live there. They want to communicate, or they want to do their bit, I suppose. There's also a range of different sponsorship options to accommodate all budgets. So I don't think the incentives, I don't have the detail on the fiscal incentives, but I don't think they will exceed the contribution. But again, I don't have the full answer to that. We'd have to have Nicosia on the call to answer that. But the concept is very much more about community engagement and with local businesses and communities and bringing them together. And I think that's really what's driving this.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Siobhan. Yeah, we wanted to have Nicosia here as well today, but they have another meeting, so they couldn't make it. But it's excellent that Siobhan could present this really good example. So thank you very much, Agnieszka. Thank you, Siobhan, for your presentations. Really nice having you here. And we will continue now with the second part of our workshop, where we will hear more about nature-based enterprises and nature-based entrepreneurship. And we will start with an introductory presentation by Isabel. She works for Horizon NUA and is leading communications in connecting nature. Yeah, and working, of course, on nature-based enterprises.
Hello, everybody, and good afternoon to you all. Thank you, Svenja, for inviting me to speak here this afternoon. We're delighted to be here to talk to you a little bit about the role of nature-based enterprises and how, I suppose, municipalities can look at, I suppose, developing a nature-based economy locally in their area around around their nature-based exemplars and solutions. As Siobhan said already, I've done quite a lot of work with the cities in developing their finance and business and governance models, the Connecting Nature Cities. It's been a hugely rewarding experience to go out and see the variety of exemplars and projects that are underway in our cities. So I do encourage you to go on to the Connecting Nature website and have a look at the variety of projects, everything from, you know, restoration of parks to school gardens and community vegetable growing to you know, restoring dilapidated areas in the old town of Malaga. Really interesting perspectives, and obviously varying I suppose approaches to how these exemplars will be funded. But anyway, I'm here today to talk to you about the nature-based enterprises, because I do also do a little bit of work in this area, supporting Siobhan and the team in Trinity and working with the cities. So you've already been introduced this afternoon very briefly to the Connecting Nature Framework, the 3 different phases and the 7 different, I suppose, building blocks within each of the phases. And just as I say, the focus here is going to be on nature-based enterprises. So what are nature-based enterprises? I suppose it's quite a new term that has been coined. A lot of the research around nature-based enterprises and the nature-based economy has been initiated in Connecting Nature by Trinity College and UCD. So we're really, I suppose, one of the front runners when it comes to I suppose exploring what is happening in this sector. But nature-based enterprises really are enterprises using nature as a core element of their product, service or offering. They can be divided into 2 categories of activities. A direct category of activity you can see there, where nature can be used directly by growing, harnessing, harvesting or restoring natural resources in a sustainable way. So you can see the NBS for green buildings, NBS out in the public spaces, ecosystem restoration and management, and then obviously NBS, around the whole area of sustainability through forestry, agriculture, tourism, etc. And then there's another indirect category of activity, whereby indirectly, by contributing to the planning, the delivery or the stewardship phase of sustainable nature-based solutions, nature-based enterprises can also have a contribution. So why nature-based enterprises? Well, we know already that the demand for nature-based solutions is increasing, not just as the concept is becoming mainstream, but we know that, as Siobhan alluded to it earlier on, that the target is to triple investment in the funding of nature-based solutions by 2030 and quadruple it by 2050. So, it really is a key priority as we head towards net zero carbon emissions. But one of the issues that has been thrown up is that for cities and for developers and for anybody seeking to implement a nature-based solution, that really there's a major roadblock when it comes to finding those skilled and experienced suppliers, people that can help and work with you to plan, to implement and to manage the nature-based solution. And that the financing of nature-based solutions is challenging, especially in the long term, the stewardship phase, which we've talked a bit about in the last session there. So nature-based enterprises, they can support the cities, they can support private sector developers and third sector organisations in each of those 3 phases, in the planning, delivery and management phase of the nature-based solution. Okay, and then I suppose in terms of additional supports and benefits, they support climate change and biodiversity policy and generate benefits for local economies. They create jobs, they sustain jobs, they help improve communities, they help bestow those wider social and environmental benefits as well. So just to give you an example of how or where a nature-based enterprise might fit in the implementation of a nature-based solution. At the planning stage, you could be interacting with landscape architects or biodiversity experts as you sketch out the nature-based solution and plan the nature-based solution to be implemented. At the delivery phase or the construction phase, you'll be interacting with the specialised horticultural contractors, for example, to deliver those green walls of the green buildings. And then maybe in the stewardship phase, you could be working with social enterprises, community groups, even the private companies through their CSR programs in terms of the ongoing management and maintenance of the nature-based solution. So it's quite wide and quite varied. The resources for supporting nature-based enterprises that we referred to there in the question and answer session, there are a series of guidebooks that have been produced on our website. They provide practical tools for enterprises and for local authorities who want to design, plan and implement nature-based solutions. So you have the framework guidebook. We have a specific guidebook then on the financing and the business models and the specific tools you need to engage with or you can engage with to do that. And then finally, the nature-based enterprise guidebook, which is really a tool for cities to help them develop the nature-based entrepreneurship strategies. And we're going to hear now shortly from two of our cities, Glasgow and Poznan, about the strategies that they have implemented to stimulate entrepreneurship, nature-based entrepreneurship in their cities. So I'm hoping now that this next phase is going to work for me and I'm not going to hit any technological problems, but I want to introduce you to the Connecting Nature Enterprise Platform, which is an innovation of the Connecting Nature project that I suppose the seed was planted, I suppose, in the spring of 2020 when the research was being completed and we realized that there was this, it became, I suppose, apparent that this big roadblock in terms of connecting buyers and suppliers of nature-based solutions together, that this wasn't happening or there was a gap in the market. So we have created the Nature-Based Enterprise Platform, which is essentially that. It's a marketplace or a shop window for nature-based enterprises to promote their goods and services to you, local authorities, to private developers, to community groups, to anybody looking to seek to implement a nature-based solution. But it's more than just that. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit now about the communities. But just, I mean, since we launched in October, we developed it throughout the summer of last year. It was launched in October 2020, so we're almost 12 years or 12 months in operation. And now we have over 1,500 active users registered on the platform. So I am going to stop sharing this presentation and I am going to switch windows, hopefully, and try and share the platform link, and I'll bring you on a quick tour of it, so to give you an introduction and a flavor, and really encourage you to try to sign up, because I suppose I don't want to. It's open to all, I should say. Can you see that? I think that should be coming up on your screens now. But this is the Connecting Nature Enterprise Platform. Anybody can sign up, and we encourage local authorities and people working in municipalities to sign up and get active and see the range of services and products and things that are out there, and the variety of nature-based enterprises that are operating. So you can see we have actually over 300 enterprises registered on the platform. You can see a huge variety here in Europe, and we're stretching across the globe now in terms of the enterprises that have registered on the platform. But in addition to the nature-based enterprise platform being a shop window, we have developed what we're calling our communities of practice, and these have become the beating heart of our platform. The communities of practice, I suppose, they align almost with the nature-based sectors that I referred to earlier, those supplying direct and indirect services. So you can see NBS for green buildings, tourism and recreation, health and well-being. We have 10 platforms or 10 communities in operation at the moment. Each of our communities is moderated by an industry leader. So they're led by an enterprise who's, as I say, who's an expert in the area. This is our Smart Tech, who the moderator is Nadina Hala from the Netherlands, who's involved in a lot of work around sensors and remote sensing and so on. But our communities, as well as just providing a platform and a platform for our members to engage with each other, to run different events and so on. Really, what we do in terms of trying to stimulate and build capacity in each of the communities is our ambassadors lead on the running of workshops and webinars. So our autumn series is about to kick off with our sustainable tourism workshop at the end of September, and then we'll have community engagement and sustainable forestry. They'll run on a fortnightly basis. Our workshops are open to everybody. They have thrown up some really interesting feedback. I think that has sort of informed a lot of, I suppose, the thinking of the direction of the nature-based economy and the type of supports that are required for enterprises. They tackle issues of the day that matter to nature-based enterprises, and they also, I suppose, provide seedbeds for innovation and act as a catalyst of ideas, as well as providing that networking platform as well for the members of the platform. So in addition to the communities and we also have a series of opportunities and what we call challenges. So people can post things like job offers, there can be tenders and grants can be promoted, e-learning modules, etc. And then the challenges, which is an area we're really seeking to develop, and we really want to start to encourage local authorities to come on board here and post a challenge, post a social challenge that you'd like to solve with the nature-based solution, and see what sort of ideas and innovations and interaction our enterprises will come back to you with. You can take it offline again if those ideas are worth pursuing. But we have, lots of different issues you can see. We also, people can post them in their local languages as well, if you're looking for, I suppose, a solution or a response from your local community or maybe at a national, regional level. But lots of different variety of questions, everything from, across the spectrum of the sustainable agriculture through to smart tech community engagement and so on. So I'll finish off by inviting you to register. Thank you, Sven. I see you've put it into the chat, naturebasedenterprise.eu, and sign up for our series of webinars and workshops that are coming up, and take a little bit of time to explore the platform. But happy to answer any questions that you might have once we get to the Q&A session. Thanks, Sven. Back to you.
Thank you, Isabel, and thank you for showing us live through the platform. I think that's always really good to get a good impression of the things, so thanks for that. And then I would like to hand over to Sean from the City Council of Glasgow in Scotland, and he will present the Nature-Based Accelerator pilot program. And then he will be joined later on stage by Ellie, who is working in a nature-based enterprise and who took part in the accelerator program, and she will also share some insights with us.
Thank you, Svenja. Can you see my slides? Okay.
Not yet. We can see basically, I think we can see your screen, but we cannot see the slides. So Isabel, have you finished sharing? Yes.
Okay.
Yes, is mine still up?
No, that looks like mine, but for some reason it's not showing my actual slide.
Maybe I think it's always this difficulty of finding the right window.
Oh, hang on. Does that look better?
Yes.
Yes.
I see the logo, so that's probably
okay,
the right one.
Hopefully you can see it now. Thanks, Svenja, and thank you, Svenja and Climate Alliance, for having us along today to talk about the Accelerator programme in Glasgow that we've been developing over the last almost year, actually. But today I'm going to have just a quick kind of overview on things, and we'll have a quick look at the open space strategy and the work that we're doing on that with Connecting Nature and our exemplar delivery plan. I'll set the scene a little bit and explain why we needed to develop a strategy for nature-based entrepreneurship in the city and what the role of the local authority was in that. And then we'll have a look at our Nature-Based Accelerator pilot programme, the journey so far and where we hope to go next. And then after me, we are lucky enough to be joined by my colleague Ellie Steele, who was a participant on the programme. We did have Justin Eade, who is another participant on the programme, supposed to join us, but he is having some significant tech issues, so we might not hear from Justin in the end, which might mean we'll have a bit more time for questions at the end. But I'll just continue. At the moment, Glasgow is a front-runner city. I'm not sure if that's been mentioned before, along with Poznan and Genk. Our exemplar project is a delivery plan that supports the city's recently adopted open space strategy. The delivery plan we are creating is a data-led GIS map, helping us to better inform open space uses across the city. The delivery plan will see lots of social, economic and environmental benefits for the city, which is why we consider it to be a strategic nature-based solution. We've had many challenges over the last few years, but we have managed to achieve quite a lot as well at the same time. We've developed this data dashboard that you can see on the screen at the moment, which contains all of the data sets that we collect and is where we can provide or carry out some analysis based on that data. Across the city in particular locations. We've undertaken a lot of stakeholder engagement with particular audiences. We've carried out extensive quality assessments and access analysis to determine the current situation of community space locations across the city and identify where there are areas of deficiency and how we can go about fulfilling those deficient areas. Importantly, we've also developed some cross-service partnerships with colleagues within the council, but also out with the council, who are helping us to deliver our objectives. And we have also supported some local nature-based solution projects on the ground, such as our Grow Chapel community growing project. We're also working towards a first draft now of our delivery plan map, which will focus on the provision of good quality and accessible multifunctional community spaces, and we will be going out to public consultation on that in the next few months. So that's an update as to where we are. The other main thing that we've been working on, and the reason that we're here today, is to talk about the strategy we're working to produce for nature-based entrepreneurship that will also help us to achieve the overall objectives of the open space strategy. And I'm glad that the nature-based solution framework has already been presented today, so it means I don't have to go into a huge amount of detail on this. What you can see on the screen is actually Glasgow's own version, and I'll explain the reason for showing this in a little minute. Basically, we have been co-producing a new nature-based accelerator program with a range of partners. But before going into detail on that, I'll just quickly explain why we have done that. Basically, the main idea was to create a program that will support budding nature-based enterprises to develop their business ideas that in turn supports the objectives of our open space strategy, such as biodiversity enhancement, building community resilience, and helping to create economic benefits by creating green jobs or reducing the green space maintenance burden on the city authority. So looking at the Connecting Nature framework that you can see here, the nature-based accelerator pilot in Glasgow is designed to fit within the stewardship phase, Isabel mentioned before, but where these sorts of strategies can fit into the framework. For in Glasgow, it's the stewardship phase of the framework. And that's because we wanted the accelerator to produce enterprises that will help us support these objectives into the longer term. So we first started developing this idea with our work package leads, and specifically Siobhan McQuaid, who is also on the call here, and who is the work package lead for business and entrepreneurship. We had a very limited budget and resource, so it was important to find the right partners, particularly the right delivery partner. We had to undertake a partner mapping process with a fairly simple methodology. Going through this process along with some of our more organic connections, we were able to then identify and build a partnership between 4 main partners. And those partners include local universities, so Glasgow Caledonian University, a service of the local authority called the Centre for Civic Innovation, and the Melting Pot, who have a Good Ideas acceleration programme already, and obviously Connected Nature. So we then proceeded on our journey to design the programme, and this was based on the Good Ideas Accelerator programme already, but also with a nature-based intervention and a slight redesign of content to include applying some Connected Nature methods, such as the Connected Nature business model canvas method, wherever that was possible to do so. Once we'd agreed a program and agreed the length, it was a 3-month program overall. We had to then find some participants, of course, and that was actually one of the biggest tasks to begin with. We had to develop a strong communication and message around it, and then getting that message out, reaching the right audience. We also set some targets for that. Initially, we were looking to attract 10 quality applications and then take on between 3 and 5 participants onto this first pilot program. And then to do that, we developed a web page, a targeted application form, and also produced a Marcoms strategy. Aware that the concept of nature-based enterprises is relatively new and unfamiliar, we knew that communicating a clear message with the application call was key, and so we used Connecting Nature materials that actually Isabel just talked about there, particularly the guidance book on nature-based enterprises, to help us do that and to build a clear, coherent message that could go out to the wider public. And in the end, we managed to get that message out to a broad audience, including some coverage in mainstream media across national mainstream media in Scotland, which was great. And we were actually overwhelmed with applications for a small team anyway. We ended up with over 40 quality applications to assess, and in the end we ended up taking on board 15 budding nature-based enterprises onto the first cohort. That was great for a pilot, and a big success from our perspective to begin with. So where to next then? Well, for the accelerator, we obviously plan to run the program again, subject to funding and resource. Of course, this was a pilot, so we have lots of learning to take to build into the design of future programs. We've been analysing feedback, which has been taken in various ways from both participants and from our partners and from other people that were involved in the program along the way. There have been some common issues that have been identified that were not covered in detail, issues that we maybe hadn't fully anticipated or didn't quite have the resource to include in this first pilot. And those sessions and those themes in particular were on funding applications and issues around land. Glasgow, you may be aware, is a post-industrial city, and we have lots of vacant dirt land, but ironically it's quite difficult to overcome a whole range of obstacles for social enterprises and other nature-based enterprises to be able to take on that land. There's lots of ownership issues and legal issues and so on. So we need to try and find a way of building that into future programs, because that came up from a few of our participants. And plus the idea of bringing in some mentorship as well, I think, has been an important part of the feedback. So that's something we want to plan for future programs. So we've already started sketching out and actually costing a new program, and I'm currently drafting a report to officials and decision makers to set out just how valuable the program has been in order to secure some future support for another version of the program to be launched. In terms of the Nature-Based Accelerator participants, well, we'll hear from Ellie in a minute, and then we'll get her first-hand view, which will be great. But I suppose I would say that at the moment, in some ways, the world is their oyster, particularly in Scotland, because in Scotland, the political will is shifting, if you like. The Scottish Government has just joined forces with the Green Party, who are now part of the formal Scottish Government, and so we are expecting a whole range of green-led policies to be implemented over the next few years, and we're also expecting and hoping that there'll be resource as well coming behind that. So I think the time is good for initiatives such as nature-based accelerators, and I'm hopeful that we'll be able to secure that funding and resource for future programs. We've also tried to connect the participants with potential funding sources that we know about at the moment, and there are a few actually that are council-led and also third sector-led as well. There are a number of platforms and events coming up that we want the participants to be part of, and the first of those is a couple of themed sessions where we look at those issues of funding and land, and they will hopefully be in-person events. The programme was largely delivered virtually, as you would imagine, and I think some of the feedback, or most of the feedback that we got back, was that people would like to have met in person more often, and that was obviously just a situation of circumstance, really. I agree with that, and actually these themed sessions we hope to run in person later in the autumn. The participants will also become part of the Good Ideas alumni and network, and therefore will be invited to various events and so on because of that. Isabel has just helpfully explained the Connect to Nature platform, so I don't need to go into a huge amount of detail on that. I think many of our participants have already signed up to that, but we always encourage them to do that, because obviously it's a fantastic platform, because not only does it demonstrate European or global opportunities, but there's also local and communities of interest on there too, which is really helpful for some of our participants. The other thing that we are hoping to do is that we've submitted a bid with the Glasgow School of Art to undertake a systems and design-led review of the accelerator, with the hope of extracting even more detailed learning out of that, but also with the hope of creating a more robust and secure network or ecosystem of nature-based enterprises locally in Glasgow. So we should be finding out whether we've been successful with that funding bid in the next week or so. So that's quite exciting. And we're also discussing other ways in which to remain connected with the participants. We recognise that this is important. Ellie, actually in particular, has had a really good suggestion on that, about mentorship and potentially bringing those back in. But maybe Ellie will expand a bit on that when she comes to give her view on the programme. And then just a final point, I'm thinking about the workshop theme, obviously. I think the Accelerator Pilot has been a really good example of where local authorities can work with and build relationships with nature-based enterprises, with the social and private sectors as well. But it's also, I think, a good demonstration of partnership working where the local authority takes the lead in initiatives like this and brings in a whole variety of different partners to work together to produce positive outcomes. So that's everything from me. I'm going to pass over to Ellie, who I think is going to share some images and give her view on the pilot, which I'm excited to hear about, to be honest. Hope stop and share this.
Thanks, Sean. Thanks a lot for sharing this exciting program. And it's really cool that it's been so successful and so well received. Yeah. So Ellie, it's your turn. Do you want to share your experience with us?
Thank you. Thanks very much, Svenja. Thanks, Sean. And just want to thank Glasgow City Council and all that have been involved in kind of the creation of this programme, because we felt hugely privileged to be a part of this pilot. As you know, my name's Ellie Steele. I'm one half of Flores, which is a not-for-profit division of a local landscape architecture firm, Ertz. So this programme really allowed us to meet, albeit virtually, like-minded individuals and learn not only about the nuts and bolts of developing our products, sales techniques and the marketplace, but also about environmental offerings and projects that are already happening in our cities and beyond. We gained knowledge of the sector, and with sessions on the values and product development and pitching, personally, our business offering evolved enormously throughout the period, and by the time we launched, had completely changed, actually, and we felt much more confident in what we were offering. The true value in the programme lies in the cohort. I have gained friends and potential colleagues who have hugely influenced not only our approach, but our values, our ambition, and the way that we will take things forward. The strength of the cohort and co-working opportunities is one of the major strengths. We are working with EcoEyes, one of the participants, a media and promotions company who will film and pilot our pilot next month. Sorry. 4 of the participants who find common ground in their plans have decided to work together with the aim of creating a bigger and more ambitious enterprise. And Justin, who's not here, I know is employing some of the participants in the programme that he is developing. It's a shame he's not here today to talk about it because it's hugely exciting. He
just appeared in the chat. He made it. So maybe he wants to say a few words. So just a short hello.
That's great. So the weaknesses we felt have been the lack of guidance on funding opportunities, and we all know that what's out there, we've actually been really good at sharing opportunities amongst ourselves, but it would have been better to have had perhaps more guidance on undertaking these funding applications. That would have been a real strength to the programme. And as Justin as Sean mentioned, that huge land issue, which I think Sean was surprised by, it's definitely not particularly for my programme, but for other enterprises, the land issue is real. These enterprises really need homes, and although Glasgow has got a stalled spaces scheme, they need long-term homes, and so definitely could benefit. Their projects can benefit areas of deprivation and meet the biodiversity agenda, and certainly would have benefited from guidance in identifying and applying to take over these spaces. We appreciate hugely the value of the programme and the opportunity to help shape future programmes, and I certainly would look forward to mentoring future applicants. And the interesting thing when I was talking to Sean about it is the value doesn't necessarily lie in being mentored by people who have completely succeeded and fulfilled their ambitions, but also people who have come across pitfalls and can help you to identify future pitfalls, saving time, and maybe that cohort working again through generations will be able to, streamline the process for future businesses. So I just wanted to take the opportunity, if it's okay, to talk to you a little bit about my project, which, if you bear with me, I will try and share. Can you see that? Can you see it?
Yeah, it's starting to appear.
Thank you very much. So, as I've said before, our business is called Floris, and we basically were developed. Our first project is called the Halo Gardens project, which was a development that was that came about due to the COVID pandemic. So, Halo Gardens are basically our gardens that were developed to celebrate social distancing and create an opportunity for a legacy and biodiverse response to what's essentially been a very difficult time. Sorry, I've just lost my, bear with me 2 seconds. So, Halo Gardens are for all health workers and loved ones affected by COVID. Small, intimate gardens that allow for safe, socially distanced green meeting rooms in hospital grounds. Halo Gardens are cheap and easy to build and can be planted to tell people's stories and express memories and emotions. For example, we plant forget-me-nots for remembrance, jasmine for love, and rowan for protection. Halo Gardens within hospitals.
Halo Gardens.
Oh,
health worker.
Sorry, that's not working.
Snowdrops, 15 kilograms.
Sorry, I'm just going to close that. I don't know why that's not working. We'll go back. We'll scrap the presentation.
Sorry.
Halo Gardens within hospitals can provide long-term COVID legacy spaces and memorials for those who have been lost, as well as celebrating those that have been involved in the fight against COVID and those who have survived it. Nurses and medics can get outside and use these garden spaces mask-free for rest and recuperation within break times. Patients who will have plants and pleasant spaces to look at from windows in long-term recovery wards as opposed to industrial spaces and car parks. And families are able to meet safely outside, where patients can be wheeled outside to meet face-to-face for visits. Part of our consultation process was dealing with bereaved families who had never been able to see each other during the recovery process. One of the stories that we heard was about a lady whose husband went for a COVID assessment in April last year and died in the following July, and she never saw him again. She wasn't able to see him face to face during that whole period. It was very difficult. And these were real stories and really moving. So this community that we're able to create allows people to come together with people who've had similar experiences. Nobody really understands the traumas that they've been through, and apart from these people who have worked and also been affected by them. So it's a real opportunity to create a community response. Halo Gardens achieve much reward for small investment, and through our consultation process, we were able to bring together these people who really can support each other going forward. Planting maintenance is done by volunteers. mainly from the consultation groups, but anybody can get involved, creating legacy community. And although they're created for the COVID crisis, they're also a great solution in any place of environmental or societal trauma. They can bring people together and create positive green legacy, supporting biodiversity and green agendas. Halo is one of a small number of inexpensive, off-the-shelf landscape solutions that we as a company want to bring to market, creating cohesive, greener communities. We will directly target housing developers offering modular additions to landscape schemes, such as a green gym wall and modular gardens that can replace parking space areas within flats and apartment developments. Halo is, although created for the NHS, can be built anywhere, and so please let us know of anywhere that you think might benefit from Halo developments. We'll come anywhere, internationally, I'm on it. Eventually we'll be there. But really, we just want to say thank you so much for taking the time to listen to us today. And again, thanks to Glasgow City Council and all of you for supporting us going forward.
Thanks so much, Ellie. And maybe you want to share the link to Hello Gardens in the chat, so so that we can have a look at the website and see if we want to.
I'd love to. Our website's not
so
up
those who are interested.
Oh, sorry. I'd love to. Our website's not up and running yet, but we've just won £10,000 worth of support to get it done. So soon.
Soon. Okay. Okay, so keep tuned, maybe keep checking. Yeah, I don't know. How can we find you? Maybe, Ellie, you can leave your email address and then we can contact you. Maybe that could be a way forward. But yeah, great news. Okay, thanks so much to Sean and Ellie, and we have some very few minutes left now. So I would give the floor to you for maybe 2 questions. And I see that Ann-Katrin has asked some questions here. So the first one is, how many job opportunities do you think will be created in Glasgow and its surroundings within the next 5 years, nature-based wise? So maybe this is more a question to Sean. What are the NBEs? I'm not sure.
Well, I mean, the real answer is I don't know. I don't have that figure in front of me at the moment. But actually, it needs to be something that is considered as part of our arguments that we are making to decision makers about taking the accelerator program forward again, because one of the objectives of the accelerator is to help with the creation of new green jobs in the city. That's one of the main overarching themes behind the accelerator for us. So we do need to give a sort of estimate actually about what impact in a positive way we expect from it. So I don't have an actual figure to hand, but I mean, if you look at the accelerator pilot that we took on, 15 different enterprises, and each of those enterprises has at least one person behind them. Many of them have got more, 3 or 4 potentially, and as they grow and develop, I would like to think that they will go on to employ more people too, so helping to create this ecosystem of new nature-based enterprises across the city in Scotland. So in an ideal world, that will increase exponentially, and I think, as I was saying in my presentation, with the benefit of more and more political support, particularly at the higher levels, I am quite confident that we'll be able to progress that well, actually. So it's a good question. I don't have the exact answer, but I do think it's going to be a lot.
that sounds promising. And then we have one more question here from Ann-Katrin. How do you mainly acquire the volunteers for planting?
Thanks very much. Yes. So in the main, the volunteers are initially collected from the consultation process. So anybody who's been involved in that process is welcome to kind of get involved. Our pilot starts planting actually in 2 weeks at the Royal Alexandra Hospital. One of the main problems that we've encountered at the moment is that because COVID's ramped up again in Scotland since things have reopened, a lot of the medics who wanted to be involved are now far too busy and exhausted to kind of get involved at the moment. So we work with, at the moment, both the NHS volunteer system, where people can approach us. Anybody who wants to get involved to support their local NHS can get involved with that. And we've got a flyer going out tomorrow to recruit for that. And also in Paisley, we're working with the local volunteer group, Renfrewshire Volunteers, who are not only helping us to, so we went out to tender for a volunteer manager essentially, and they're managing the volunteer process and also supplying some of the plants and some of the volunteers. The same will happen in Glasgow. We're going to be working with the conservation volunteers in Glasgow with future processes. So there's a mixture, but basically the volunteer management goes out to tender and they're recruited from the consultation cohort and anybody else who wants to get involved.
Thank you. Thanks so much. And with that, we've closed our workshop. I thank all the speakers for their really interesting presentations. Maybe some of the speakers will also stay a while, and then you can maybe also bilaterally ask your questions to them, maybe also to Justin, who didn't have a chance today to give his experience of the nature-based accelerator. So take care and talk to you soon.